Okay, let's say we were given this equation and we were asked to identify which conic section this equation models. So which conic is this? Now, at first glance, if you just look at this, it's not really obvious because it's not in the form of a parabola, it's not in the form of a circle, and it doesn't even have a fraction in it, so it doesn't look like it can be in a hyperbola or an ellipse. So the way we figure out which conic section this actually models is we want to force this algebraically into the form that we're recognize. So into the form of a circle, hyperbola, ellipse, etc. So it's not really clear how we do that because there's a lot of stuff going on here and it looks kind of intimidating. But the way we would do this is we complete the square. So let's go ahead and do that. So the first step we want to do is, the way I like to do it, is you just write the x's together, the y's together, and move the constants over. So we have an x squared term and a 24x, so we're going to write those together. So we have 4x squared plus 24x, and then we have, different color, a y squared term and a y term here, so we're going to write plus 9y squared minus 36y. And now we're going to move this 36 over, so we're going to subtract the 36 from both sides. If I do a minus 36 here, this cancels, minus 36, we got a negative 36 on the right, equals negative 36. Now, dealing with our x terms over here, you may be tempted to just factor out a 4x, but it's not really in our favor to do that because in the general forms, we have some quantity squared. So we want to leave this x squared term as it is. We don't want to take out an x from that and just leave it as a linear x term. So what we're going to do is we're not going to factor out a 4x. We're just going to factor out a constant. We're just going to factor out a 4. So if we do that, we got 4, and then what we're multiplying is x squared. And then 4 times what number will give us 24x? Well, that's just going to be a 6x. Now, for the y, same thing. We don't want to factor out a 9y, even though we technically could, because it's going to be harder for us to mush into our form that we want. So we're just going to factor out a 9. So we have our 9 pulled out, and then we're multiplying 9 by y squared, so that's going to be our first term in here. And then what number will we multiply by 9 to get negative 36y? That's just going to be a negative 4y. And then all of this is equal to negative 36. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to actually complete the square. So if you remember, the way we complete the square is we take our b, so if we're given a quadratic, let's say we have a quadratic like this. First thing we do is pull out our a, or factor out an a, so we already did that. We took out the leading term of each of these quadratics right here. So we take out this a, we have x squared plus b over ax plus c over a. And then we want to take this middle term, divide it by 2, and square it, and then multiply it by this a and add it to both sides. So we're going to do that for this. So in this case, our b over a is going to be just a 6. So we're going to take this, divide it by 2, and then square it, and then add it to both of these parentheses. Or not both of these parentheses, but add the b over 2 squared over here, and then the b over 2 squared over here. So what we're going to have is we're going to still have this 4. We're going to have an x squared plus 6x, and then our b in this case is 6. So 6 over 2 is going to be 3. 3 squared is going to be 9, so we're going to add a 9 right here. And then for our y terms, we also have this 9. Now our leading term stays the same, and our second term stays the same, but to complete the square, we need this b over 2 squared and add it. So our b is a negative 4. If we divide that by 2, we get negative 2, and we square negative 2, we get positive 4. So we're going to add a positive 4 over here. Now, we can't just go adding terms willy-nilly to one side of the equation. We have to do the same thing on the other side. So what you may be thinking is, well, if we added a 9 over here and we added a 4 over here, we just have to do a 9 and a 4 over here, and then it works out. But since we had a factor that we factored out, so we have a constant over here that we factored out, if we actually distributed this constant back in, we would have 4 times 9, so 36, and 9 times 4, so that would also be a 36. So we have to add 2 36s to this side of the equation, instead of just a 4 and a 9, because in reality, that's what the constant is. If I foiled this, if I distributed this, I would have two 36s that I would be adding technically to the left side. So I need to add those two 36s to the right side. So we're going to add one 36, which is from the 4 times 9. And then we're going to add another, actually I'll draw it out, 4 times 9. And then we're going to have another 36 from the 9 times 4. Alright? Now, what we end up having is something that looks like this. So if we write this out again, we have 4 times x squared plus 6x plus 9 plus 9 times y squared minus 4y plus 4, and all of this equals this stuff over here. So negative 36 plus 36, that's just going to get us back to 0, and then 0 plus 36 is going to be 36. So we have just a 36 over here. Now, if you notice, these are perfect square polynomials. So we can basically just reduce this to x plus some h quantity squared. And if this looks familiar, we're starting to get closer to the form that we want. So, for the conic sections. So, we can write this as 4 times the quantity x plus 3 squared. And if you FOIL this out, this would make sense, because x plus 3 squared is just x plus 3 times x plus 3. First, x squared outer plus 3x inner plus 3x last plus 9. So we have x squared plus 6x plus 9, and that's exactly what we have right here. So basically the way you do this is just x plus that b over 2 that we did earlier. So b over 2 in this case would be 6 over 2, which is 3, and then that's the quantity squared. And then on the right hand side, or not on the right hand side, but on the y polynomial over here, this would just be 9 times y. Our b over 2 is going to be negative 4 over 2, so negative 2. And then that's that quantity squared. And this is all still equal to 36, because we haven't really added or subtracted anything. All we've done is just mush this into a different form. Now, we're left with these constants out here. So, the way we get rid of these constants is we want to not just divide by 4 and divide by 9, because that's just going to make everything messy. So instead, we know that in our conic section forms, we need a 1 on the right-hand side. So we're just going to divide everything by 36. So if we do that, we divide this by 36, divide this by 36, and divide this by 36. This is just going to go to 1. 9 over 36, that's just going to give us 1/4. So this can be rewritten as, I'll write it in black. So before we do the 9 over 36, let's do the 4 over 36. So we're going to have x plus 3 quantity squared. The 4 over 36 reduces to 1/9. So imagine we have a 1 up here. This is a 1/9. We don't really need to write this 1, so we can delete that. So x plus 3 quantity squared over 9 plus y minus 2 quantity squared over 9 over 36. So 9 over 36 reduces to 1/4. So all we have to do is put this 4 on the denominator, and then we have a 1 over here. And we can see that this is now in our general form of a conic. And since we're adding, we know that this is going to end up being an ellipse. So the conic, if we go all the way back to the top, the conic that this is an ellipse. And we're done.